Welcome, everyone, to the Lee Schools TV podcast. I'm Adam Wright. Joining us today is Shellie Taylor, the graduation coordinator for the School District of Lee County. Shellie, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Good morning.
You have been with the school district for 20 plus years, right?
I have. I started in August of 1998, so it's been really exciting, but I actually moved here in the late 80s.
Yeah, so you grew up in Lee County.
I
right?
did. I grew up in Lee County.
Went through the school system. Where'd you graduate from high school?
I did. I graduated from Cape High back in 92.
All right.
The good days.
I'm a Fort Myers grad myself, so
Awesome.
I'm happy to have you here today.
Yeah.
Now, the main focus of our conversation today will be ensuring student success, specifically making sure kids graduate from high school.
Absolutely.
Because you're the graduation coordinator.
Yeah.
Now, your role as graduation coordinator, this is a new position in the county. You started July of last year.
I did. Just rolled over 1 year.
Yeah. So how did this position of graduation coordinator come to be, and why was it created?
Well, it was a very exciting time for our district. We were looking strategically and really focusing on what our goal needs to be. So in regards to where should our district stand by 2020? The executive team, along with a lot of input from stakeholders in the community, developed a goal that our graduation rate, we really needed to gear it towards 90% by 2020. And so Dr. Adkins and I had a wonderful conversation in his office just about, what are the things strategically that we can do, and how can we look at things with a little bit of a different lens. And so out of that came a great opportunity to be the district's first graduation coordinator.
So I want to add, I like to start off with providing a little bit of context. So where you said the goal is to get to about a 90% graduation.
We want to be at 90%.
Where do we stand right now?
Right now, we're almost hitting 80. We're at 79.7. We had almost a 1% increase over the last year. So we are on the right track. What we need to realize, though, is that it's really not about getting to the 90%. It's really about having processes and strategies in place and interventions for students to not only get to that 90%, but what are we going to do to sustain it? And that's where we really have to have a strong system in place.
And we'll talk about the exciting things you and your team have been working on to increase the graduation rate. Now, I wanted to, before we get to that, so we're hovering around 79, 80% graduation rate. I think that's, last year's graduation rate, I believe, was the highest since 2010-11.
It was. We are definitely on an upward trend, for sure. We're just not where we need to be.
And I also read that if you take out the charter schools from the equation, then our graduation rate in our, traditional non-charter high schools is around 88%.
It is. It's significantly higher. And, that is a good point. That's something that we continue to work with our own district staff in understanding when is it the right time for a student to go to a charter. We don't want to ever wait until it's really too late for a student. So we really need to be looking at interventions prior to their junior or their senior year. But our relationship with our charters is very strong, and our charters are an incredible partner with us, and they really do offer a lot of support for students who need the type of structure that a charter school provides. So we're very appreciative.
And just a little more context, the state average for graduation rate, I believe, is about 85.
It is. It's right around 85.
And I think the U.S. average is around 80, 81, I think.
It is. There is an incredible resource that I tend to read up on almost daily, but it's called Grad Nation. And so they are really an alliance, and we haven't spoken too much about this before, but Grad Nation also has an overall goal for the nation to be at 90%. So what's neat is to see that our district is in alignment with that same nationwide goal. And so we're really working strategically at ensuring that happens.
And I also saw that some good news is that minority African-American students and Hispanic students, their graduation rates have increased.
It is. It has increased. And I really, one of the questions that some people will ask is, why do I feel like that population is increasing? And if I can just interject here, one of the things that I do believe that we as a district, because we're starting to really focus on our subgroups and we're starting to look at the culture and we're starting to understand students in more of a way that they know that we're engaging with them and that we're trying to engage with them. All things attendance, behavior, course performance. But we have some incredible high schools that are doing very innovative things, just reaching out to subgroups and minority groups. There's Beta Chi that's happening out at Lehigh Senior High School, but that's only one. There's a lot of really incredible, innovative projects that are going on.
Always room for improvement.
Yes.
Now, some people might be wondering why we're even talking about graduation for our podcast today, because it's only August.
That's right.
But it's important to remember that ensuring graduation is a year-round process, and it's not only important for kids in high school.
It is. And our philosophy from our entire team, and definitely the heart of graduation for me, is that graduation starts in pre-K. It is a pre-K initiative. Even right now, we are not even finished with the first week of school, but we're looking at attendance patterns even as early as this first week. We know that research says that within the first 20 days, when students are absent twice, it sets a pattern for their entire lifelong educational career. We've also, just done the math. And if students begin in kindergarten and they begin missing 2 days a month, by the time they're seniors, they have missed 11 months of education.
Wow.
So
almost a full year
really,
of education that they're just missing over the course of their...
Yeah. And even as a parent, I have 5 children, 3 that are still in our district system, 2 that have graduated. But, my children being absent 2 days a month, you might not seem that that's a really big deal. You've got medical appointments or this and that. But I think it's really important for us to start focusing on the impact that that's really having on our students.
I'm glad you brought up attendance, because September is Attendance Awareness Month, right?
It's Attendance Awareness Month.
And talking to you before we started this podcast, I know you mentioned that attendance is something that you'd really like us to improve on, right? Student attendance.
Yes, for sure.
Tell us where we're at with...
One of the things that we are focusing on in our district is students that are chronically absent, which means that over a period of time that they have missed 10% or more. So within a school year, we're really looking at monitoring those students specifically. Now, historically, school districts will often look at daily average attendance. So when you pull up a school's daily average attendance and you see that it is somewhere around 90% or 92%, you might not really feel like there's much of a warning there.
It seems high.
It seems high, right? It's in the 90s. But you could have a school that is 90% or higher on their average daily attendance and still have 37% of your kids chronically absent. And that's where we as a district are starting to look at kids and what is the pattern and why are they absent, and starting to ask those questions.
Why do you think students, what are the reasons students would be chronically absent? I know there's I'm sure many different reasons.
There's many different reasons. Some of the things that we've looked at is transportation. Some of the things that parents can even think about is having a backup plan. My own children ride the bus. We understand that buses can be late. But if we have a backup plan, and that's one thing that I know has helped our own family. The other thing is medical appointments. Sometimes medical appointments, we understand that we serve many children with significant needs and may have therapies. But we really want to work with community partners to ensure that our students are given all opportunities to have appointments outside of their instructional day.
Now, attendance is one of the ABCs, right?
It is.
And that's a big focus this year, is focusing on the ABCs of education.
That's right.
What are the ABCs?
The ABCs. So it's attendance, behavior, and classroom success. So one of the things that we look at in the eyes of graduation is trying to be very proactive. So we, and I think we're going to talk about our early warning system here in a little bit, but attendance is for us, the impact for that is loss of instructional time. So whether or not it's excused or unexcused, really we don't look at that. We look at the fact that a student is out and that they have a loss of instructional time. In regards to behavior, we're looking at those students that are suspended, either out of school or in school, because we know that even when students are in school and they're suspended, they're not getting the same rigor of the classroom instruction. They're missing out on relationships in the classroom and all the things that we know that kids engage with. They're missing out on. And then the last one, C, is for classroom success or classroom and course performance. And that's where we really look at content mastery. Are students reading, writing, understanding math, and then moving forward into their credits to graduate.
So we'll take the A out of ABC, attendance. That's one of the indicators, right, that you look for in this new early warning system that you and your team have implemented. I know Tammy Scott on your team has been instrumental in coming up with this new system, this early warning system.
Yes.
Tell us about this early warning system.
I'm really happy to elaborate on this, Adam, because Tammy and I began work last February. Actually, it was a little bit later than that, but we really began to dig into the research and look at what are those indicators that are causing students to be disengaged. Now, ultimately, I'm looking in the eyes of graduation, right? So I'm looking at all the indicators that might start as young as elementary school and middle school, but I was really looking at what does research say. And so we developed a tool that we are using across the district now, essentially our early warning system. And we have 42 indicators, 42, I will say, risk factors that are all working behind the scenes with our fabulous programmers able to pull it all in through our in-house program for Castle. But what we did was we took those 42 indicators. Yeah.
So there's 42. Can you give me, obviously attendance is one that you look at. Can you give me some more examples of what the different indicators are?
Absolutely. So attendance, we look at all day absences, but then we also look at any day of OSS or ISS. It also falls under the category of missing instruction, right? So we look at quarterly course failures in ELA or math. We also look at FSA achievement. And then we also look at students that are scoring substantially below in reading. Then when we move on to some additional indicators, we're looking at GPA. I'm
going to have you, if you want to look at your, you bring them right here, so that way you're still talking into the microphone.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Awesome. So we're also thinking of, and looking at the GPA, we're looking at credits. So in middle school, our students in sixth grade, at the end of sixth grade, are they missing any really core credits? We're looking at students that are not able to meet that civics credit. We're looking at students that have been retained. One of the things in our district that we have looked at is, does retention really work? We know that we've got some statute behind us that says, we've got to do something different for third graders. So in our district, we have data that says if you are retained or even good cause promoted in third grade, you have about half of a chance to graduate on time. So really that pulls us down into that pre-K, kindergarten, first, second grade level to really focus, which is exciting because as a graduation coordinator, a lot of people do think this is a high school initiative, but it's really not. It's about looking at students very young and looking at
tracking
what indicators
them all
they
throughout
have.
their okay. So you've got 42 different indicators you're looking at. That is, so you've used early warning systems in the past, and other school districts have as well, right?
Yes,
but
absolutely.
The difference between, and this one is unique to our school district because we had 12 indicators that you were looking at before, and now you have 42.
Absolutely, yeah. So a couple of years back, we did, like you said, we did have an early warning system. And basically, it was built on the premise of if you had 2 or 3 indicators, you were at low risk. If you had 4 or 5 indicators, maybe 6, you were at medium risk. If you had over 6, you were at high risk. And what we really wanted to do is we wanted to be able to look at the relationship of the indicators. For example, in the old system, you might have had a student that had a GPA of under a 2.0, but they might have only had that one risk indicator. Maybe they were attending school on time. They were well behaved. There was no referrals and no suspensions. So they only had the GPA. So they would have fallen into a weak risk, where our early warning system says, that's an essential component.
Yeah. Some indicators are weighted heavier than others.
Yeah. It's really about the relationship of the indicator working side by side with each other. For example, even at the high school level, we weigh the GPA higher than attendance. We know attendance is important. We've got to engage our students and our families, but also we know that students can be resilient and they can overcome barriers. And so that's where, we have to essentially look at the GPA component.
And they can be related because if you have a ton of absences, then it's likely that your GPA might be lower. It
is absolutely more likely.
So you have a few different systems that compile all this data for you, these indicators of student, and then funnel them into some spreadsheets that you look at, or
actually it's really nice because schools can look at one screen and all of the students within the school are going to fall under one of the 4 tabs. So you'll see students that are under the weak risk and the light risk and the moderate risk, and then your strong risk. On top of it, last year we had some legislation. We had the House Bill 7069 that came behind the work that Tammy and I had done through the early warning system and supported the fact that districts need to have a K-8 system in place where we are documenting of all of the 42 indicators, there's 4 that the state really look at, but it's the 10% or more absent. So we're looking at chronic absences. We're looking at OSS and ISS. And then also we're looking at course failure and FSA. So those are the 4. So we embed that legislative requirement into our existing early warning system, which is awesome because it meets both requirements.
Now, is this school year the first school year that you're using this new early warning system?
It is, absolutely. So Tammy and I rolled it out. We with the help of our data guys and Castle and programmers, we were able to complete our first training back in February. But what's really innovative is that all of our schools this year have a requirement to write a school improvement plan. And the data that drives their school improvement plan is the early warning system data.
So how is it utilized? When you find a student that meets some criteria saying, hey, this student is at risk, disengaged.
Absolutely. Yes.
You have the data. Then what happens when you find a student, you lock onto a student that's at risk?
Yep.
What happens then?
Okay. So I'm really glad that you asked that because that's really why we train on the early warning system.
You can have all the data in the world.
We can have it all, but if we don't do anything with it and we don't know what it really means, it's really non-essential. So what schools are doing is they are looking at their early warning system data, and they are grouping into professional learning communities. So we refer to them in the district as PLCs. And so what they're doing is they're looking at the student specific behind the data. And then we will look at interventions. The first thing that we look at is student engagement. And we start asking those questions. If the indicator is attendance, then we've got to start asking why. Why is the student not attending? What are the patterns of attendance? For example, at the elementary level, we might look across the grade levels and look to see, is there a particular grade level that has higher attendance or less students that are chronically absent? And what is it that grade level is doing? So we are really encouraging schools to start asking those questions of each other and the colleagues. And then also, mentoring. Mentoring is a huge piece. So we've got a couple of projects right now. We have Destination Graduation, where we're working with our Southwest Florida Workforce Development Board on providing mentors that are from the community into 5 of our high schools. But then also we were just awarded the Check and Connect grant, which I'm really excited to talk about. But that is going to allow our district some additional funds and resources and technical assistance, all based on the research of student engagement and what is it that we need to do to engage students, looking at the data behind attendance, behavior, course performance, but then also the resources of what do you do? How do you engage a family that doesn't seem to value education? And so we're looking at training folks in the schools to better understand how to do that.
Training teachers?
Teachers, staff. I mean, really, if you look across research says it's one caring adult. And I don't know if you can think back to high school, but if you think about, 1 or 2 teachers or maybe staff members that made a difference, it could have been somebody in the front office. It could have been somebody in the cafeteria. It was just, you knew that you had a caring adult at that school. And that's what our hope is that families will be encouraged and that teachers will be encouraged and that staff will be encouraged to know that all of us can make a difference.
Do you find that the school district has enough resources to deal with the amount of students we may have that are at high risk for disengagement or not graduating? I know it's a loaded question.
It's a tricky question to answer, but really, my first thought is yes, because it's about relationships. We have teachers, we have families. So amongst the two, if we can just use our relationships, build the encouragement and the engagement between the two, that's our answer.
So the training has happened?
For Check and Connect?
And it's ongoing?
Yeah, well, Check and Connect, we were just awarded Check and Connect. So the funds will be awarded to us in October, and then we'll start getting that training out to schools.
Cool. And I know it kind of almost reminds me a little bit about when they talk about analytics in sports. There's some people that love analytics, and that's what they just look at the numbers and form their teams based on data. And there's other, old school players that don't like the analytics, and they think there's more to sports than just data and numbers.
Absolutely.
So, yes. And I know you wanted to talk about how it's important not to view the early warning system as a negative as far as just crunching numbers, and
absolutely,
because you're really looking at the whole student, right?
Yes, we definitely encourage staff when they look at the early warning system to not use it as a negative tool in any way. For example, if you see a student that does have a couple indicators showing that they're at strong risk for disengagement, not to use that to say to a parent, your child is not going to graduate. That's the last type of statement that we want to send. What the statement is and what the tool is it's an early warning. We want to catch students before they become disengaged. So of course we've got a lot of indicators working behind the scenes so that we can really start looking at groups and subgroups and target our interventions for students. But it is not to be used as a negative tool at all. It's to catch kids early and really develop those interventions that they need.
Can you talk a little bit about how kind of revolutionary it is, or how we're kind of pioneers almost in that we're utilizing this 42 indicator system?
Yeah, definitely. So you had mentioned my colleague, Tammy Scott. Tammy is our district coordinator for MTSS. And, when you really start thinking of the idea behind students being on time and on track. The ultimate goal is graduation, but it's really about the interventions. So after Tammy and I came up with our early warning system, we were actually approached by the problem-solving response to intervention team in our local area here to present our early warning system in a webinar. It was
that's a non-school district.
It is. It's a
group.
Discretionary fund, so they are a resource for us, and so it was great because folks even outside of Lee County are recognizing that the work that we're doing in Lee County, and it is very innovative. Many schools and districts will spend a lot of money to hire corporations and companies that have developed early warning systems, and they can step in. The great thing about this being in-house is that we are the ones that have the relationships with the students, and we can look at our trend data. That's also one very important thing when you're working with an early warning system, is to not make it so structured in a way that it can't be flexible. One of the things that we haven't really spoken much about this morning, but it's important for the impact for our district, is mobility. Research doesn't come up with mobility much in the eyes of an early warning system, but we know the impact of mobility in our district.
Mobility as in terms of? Like
students transferring in and out from one school to another. Okay. So one of the great things about how an early warning system is even beneficial to a district is that you can look at your data and then look at your policies and procedures and see if we have policies and procedures in place that support what the research says. One of the new things this year is that we are going to drastically decrease movement for students after the second week of school. One of the other things that we're putting into place with our new Office of Student Enrollment is that middle schoolers will be required to stay in their school through the semester. And then if there's a challenge or an issue, they can work with a student assignment, they can work with their school.
Why is that important?
It's really important because that's where students master content, and that's how they earn credit for that semester. So what happens is if a student were to leave halfway through the semester and go to a different school, that student could be off track. They could have already mastered some of the content. Maybe they were behind. One of the things I think it's really important to even throw in here is how innovative our district has been with the curriculum maps and the instructional guides. That is phenomenal. The impact of our entire district being able to be on the same page with our mobility issues and getting our graduation rate to 90%, that's just innovative. So we're really excited how so many different departments have really demonstrated the knowledge and the wisdom to think outside the box and to think about how we can really get all of our families on the right page, all of our students on the right page, on track and on time to graduate.
I think it's really impressive that you and your team have been able to come up with this in-house, this new system. And you also have a graduation task force.
We do. We are developing that this year. That is very exciting. That's an opportunity really for district folks and school folks to start having conversations with a laser-like focus into their data. There's two different components to looking at graduation. One is the data and the coding, and we know the effect of kids withdrawing, either withdrawing as a dropout or a non-graduate. But then we also look at the intervention side, and the intervention side is where our early warning system comes in. But the other side is the data and looking at the coding.
So this task force, graduation task force, how many people are on it? What is their role?
Okay, so we are, what essentially it will be is that we will have some experts around the table that can deliver and communicate what the dropout rate is at a particular school, how many students are non-grads, look at the early warning system data, look at the impact school by school on attendance and on behavior and on course performance, and really picking up on patterns of where kids are missing credits. So at the table, we would have the counselor, we would have a school social worker, we might have a nurse. We may also have an intervention support specialist. We are fortunate in our district to have that position at every school, but that's really the person that looks at interventions and the structure within the school. So it's got to be a team approach. It can't fall on the shoulders of one particular person at all.
Is there anything else before we move on anything else about the early warning system or the graduation task force that you wanted to mention?
We've had really great response. I just, as we go out and we train schools and staff, the response that we get is, how can I get this in the hands of my students? And that's really exciting for us to be overcoming just the barriers or something new, but teachers they want to use it. They want to give information to students, and even, teachers that are in gaming and design and teachers that are teaching art. It's really awesome to see that those content area teachers are engaging with kids in a way, and the early warning system gives them a tool to do that, gives them a way to just be transparent and say, this is where you're at, this is where your GPA is, this is where your credits are, and that to me that's new for us.
So will the teachers have access to the same data that you have?
They do.
Okay.
Yep. They can look at their school data. I can look at data across the schools, but they can look individually at, and then they can even create groups.
Do they get like a quarterly report, or is this something they can look at?
They can look at every day.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing, is that the data in the early warning system is updated every night. So if you're working with a student and you're tracking attendance, it can be a daily thing. You can always look to see, if the attendance is getting better.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're also working on something called Project 10.
Okay, Project 10.
Yeah, what is Project 10?
And so Project 10 is a discretionary project, which means that they are outside of our district. So they are state funded, but the resources that we bring to our district are really, they stem out of the work from Project 10. Project 10 started doing a color coding system and really looking at a very strategic way to project a graduation rate for any school at any given time based on GPA and credits and state assessment criteria. And so we really have to be thankful for our discretionary projects. Resources and books and research are provided by discretionary projects as well. So we would not be where we are in Lee County today without the help and the support of discretionary projects, like I mentioned, problem solving, RTI, and then also Project 10.
So Project 10 is something new, or this is something that we've been...
No, we have been establishing relationships with Project 10. The main focus from Project 10 is working with students with disabilities. But what we know out of that is that those core strategies they benefit all students. So as we are really focusing on subgroups like our students with disabilities, one of the things we didn't mention, I failed to mention in our grad rate,
students with disabilities have a lower graduation.
Disabilities do have a lower graduation rate. We made an incredible difference last year with increasing 6% from 50 to 56. We're hoping to be much higher than that, with the support of individual education plans, 504 plans. It really should be a level playing field for our students with disabilities.
So this Project 10 gives schools a kind of a real-time fluid look on a daily basis of what chances of what their graduation rate will likely be?
Well, not exactly.
Okay.
So Project 10, they are just a resource for us.
Okay.
So every year they participate in conferences, and folks from school staff are invited. So it's really technical support.
Okay.
And then we take it, and so the idea of color coding graduation rates and that was provided from Project 10, but then we took it and we put it into our early warning system, the color coding, but then we are using that to increase our grad projections. We're going to use that type of format through our graduation task force. That gives us a way to look at real-time data.
Cool. And you also brought something called the 1 million.
It's the 1 million project.
What is that?
And that is a partnership between the school district and Sprint.
You can hold it up for that camera.
Let me hold it up. Yeah. So what Sprint has provided for us is 2,500 hotspot devices, where we can look at our students that are at most risk for being disengaged, but also have a barrier to internet at home. And we want to overcome that. So for free, total, no expense at all, we have 2,500 devices that we are getting into our high schools to be used. So students won't have that barrier of not being able to work outside of the classroom.
That's great. What kind of effect do you see this having on
Well,
student success?
Well, we of course we hope that this allows students to be more engaged in work outside of the classroom, like homework or research.
So these are like Wi-Fi hotspots that they can take home with them?
They can.
Cool.
They can take home with them. They have plenty of internet accessibility throughout the month. And then when a student graduates, they also have an opportunity to apply to get a free smartphone.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Whatever we can do to engage students. Yeah.
So that's great. Is there anything else we haven't gotten to? Any other exciting projects that your team is working on?
So much, Adam. Yeah. I think I could spend the entire day talking to you. No, I think we are just really surrounding ourselves with the ABCs. Mm-hmm. We know the importance of attendance, behavior, and classroom success. We have this incredible tool called the early warning system that is available to our staff. And we more than anything want to engage families. We want students to be on track and on time. So it's a great privilege to be in this position as a graduation coordinator. We know that we have a lot of work ahead of us, but we have accomplished an incredible amount of work just in the last year.
Yeah. Goal is to get that graduation rate district-wide to 90%.
And then be able to sustain it.
Yeah. And it's also important for people to realize that that's not likely to happen in 1 year, right?
Right.
It'll take some time.
Absolutely.
But we're heading in the right direction.
We are headed in the right direction.
Cool.
Takes a village.
How excited are you to start implementing this year and see where it goes?
I am very excited, and that is just to say the least. We have just some incredible opportunities. I think that if we continue to think outside of the box, if we continue to recognize that a graduation is it starts in pre-K, like I said, and we just have the lens of every day we have an opportunity to impact a student. We have an opportunity to engage with the student and the family, and then not to become any type of conflict when we do enter a problem-solving situation, and to recognize that, our students are going to give their best. We just got to continue to engage them.
Well, and we have all the faith in the world in our students.
Yes, we do, for sure.
But it takes hard work, dedication.
It does. Yeah. It does. They have to be committed to be there.
Well, you've certainly put in some hard work, and you're certainly dedicated. So, thank you, Shellie, for joining us today.
You're welcome. Right. It was my pleasure.
And thank you for joining us as well and listening to the Lee Schools TV podcast. We'll see you next time.